We've now been joined by Jacob Olidort, who's the Director of Research at GINSA, given the Center for Defense and Strategy. Jacob, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a sort of a difficult week for Israel, that vote in the United Nations, and then it seems to be some sort of pressure that do things differently. Things can't carry on the way they are. What do you make of what's happening?
Thank you so much, Vikram, for having me on your program. You're right. It's been a very difficult week. This has been the most intense fighting that Israel has faced. The focus on casualties is a very natural one. I mean, and in as much as, any one casualty, one civilian casualty is a tragedy, it only tells a partial picture. And so I think we need to put this into the context of Israel taking, as the White House spokesperson said, John Kirby, unprecedented precautions to try to mitigate harm to civilians on the one hand. And on the other hand, you have Hamas, which uses civilians as human shields with its terrorist infrastructure underground, under hospitals and schools. And so I think that is kind of the context in which you see the operation proceeding.
Jacob, I was just curious, what are Israel's friends actually telling it right now? Because there are two aspects to this. It's not that easy to decapitate terror groups in an urban setting like we have in Gaza. I mean, the Americans have seen it in places like Iraq, others have seen it in Syria. It's not as easy as it sounds to actually go in and crush Hamas. And number two is, of course, the question of even if you are to do it, there's a vacuum there in Gaza which somebody has to try and fill. So what are Israel's friends telling it? What should be the next steps? Is there a good option here for Israel?
There are still over 100 in Hamas captivity. They're not only Israelis, but there's still Americans there. Their families just met with President Biden yesterday. There are other nationalities as well. So it's a highly fraught operation. Most of Hamas operatives are underground, in a 300+ mile tunnel maze to evade detection, to hide their weapons. So it is complicated. I think Israel's friends are doing two things. I mean, first, providing it the diplomatic support on the world stage. And I think you're seeing throughout the region and in the United States measures to prevent the conflict from escalating or broadening across the region. You've seen in the last couple of weeks, for example, a number of Gulf states prevent a kind of more maximalist reaction among certain Arab countries that would have, basically taken the form like the 73 embargo. That obviously did not happen because Israel's friends are working quietly to make sure that at least this is contained and Israel can do what it needs to do.
So would you think that there are chances of a humanitarian ceasefire or a cessation of hostilities for a while, or is it unlikely?
I think, so Israel has been on a regular, maybe even daily basis, implementing a humanitarian pause of several hours to allow assistance to come in. It should be noted that these pauses actually prolong the war because they allow Hamas to regroup, to collect themselves and plan their attack. So that alone, actually, it's worth considering that actually is a factor that exacerbates the civilian humanitarian toll.
All right, Jacob, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Vikram.